Hi, I'm Brittany, a neurodivergent mum and speech pathologist. This is Not Just Theories, where I share what actually works in my real, messy life. Because life doesn't follow a theory. Here's what I actually do. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Not Just Theories. In the last episode, we talked about the concept of serve and return, which is that back and forth of early communication that lays the foundation for language. And today we're going a little step further than that, which is talking about which words should we focus on first. So these are for children who either aren't yet talking or have fewer than about 50 single words. This information will be relevant. So if your child's just starting out with words, we know it can be really tempting to just grab a list of words from somewhere like Pinterest or buy a pack of picture flashcards. But the truth is that not all words are equal. The words that we choose, how we introduce them, really matters. So I'm going to walk you through some little guidelines that I use as a speech pathologist and as a parent, and share how I weave those words into everyday routines and play, while still following our child's lead in that serve and return framework. So kids don't learn words in a vacuum. The reason we learn language is because words do something. Words are helpful and convenient. So when you're thinking about what kinds of words to teach, we want you to steer away from things like just naming animals or colors, because these are often more like test words for adults. It's like, oh, do you know this color? Do you know this animal? And they're not necessarily functional words for that child to actually communicate meaningfully. When you're picking first words, you want to focus on words that are useful, motivating, powerful, or social. So I'm going to explain these in a little bit more detail. If you're thinking of what might be a useful word, that's a word that will let the child get something that they want or need. So these are words like help or open or something like more. You also want the words to be motivating. So this is thinking about words that are tied to things that the child's really interested and motivated to communicate. So that might be something like car or bubbles or swing, as well as those functional words I was talking before about, like help and open. Powerful words really help take control of the world. So if your child is learning a word like stop or mine or go, they were a word that they can command somebody else to do or that assert their own thing, like the possession words such as mine. And when I talk about words that are social, these are things that help the child connect with other people. So these are your basic words like hi or bye, or even something like again or peekaboo. But when you're looking at words that are useful, motivating, powerful, and social, there are different categories that those words can fall into. So these are words that I prioritize, and they fall into categories. So one type of word is a request word. So that's your more, up, help, open, go. Protest words, no, stop, all done. Words for people or relationships that are important to them. So those are words like mama, dada, names of siblings, names of pets. Favorite things. So those are words like ball, bubbles, car, teddy, swing, whatever's the favorite things for that particular child. And then also fun social routine words. Bye, hi, night, night, peekaboo, again. And when you look at that list, not that you're looking, when you listen to that list, you might notice that words like blue or triangle or hippopotamus didn't make the list. These are fun words later, but they are not functional first words. So the key is we're not just sitting your child down and running flashcards of these words. As I talked about with serve and return, kids learn words best when we respond to their serves. So instead of holding up a picture of a car and saying car or say car, the idea is to wait until you're playing with a car or they reach for a car or they point to a car driving past, and then you can model that word. Car, vroom, vroom, it's a car. And that way the word is tied to their intention. They're motivated in that moment to learn it and they're focused on it in that time. So when you've looked at those words, and we're talking about not doing it with flashcards. I don't want you to go and create flashcards for words like help and open and more. I want you to start working them into your everyday life. One of the main things when you're doing these words is to try and do them in daily routines. So when you're thinking about mealtime, can you model words like more or all done or drink or open during meal times? Another daily routine that's great for doing some nice repetition is a time like getting dressed or undressed. So these are words like shoes, on, off, help, my turn, your foot. And then another daily routine or common routine is something like bath time. So you can model words like splash or wash. So these moments happen every day or close to every day. So the words can get repeated in a meaningful context. Another great opportunity for modeling these words is in play. So again, with that serve and return, when you're playing with your child and you notice what they're focusing on, think about what words might go along with them that are generally applicable, not just in that activity, but that they can use across the day. So when you're playing bubbles, pop and bubbles are fun words to do in that moment, but words like more or again are even better. If you're playing cars, vroom vroom and beep beep are really fun, but go and stop are words that are going to be used, applied to other contexts as well. So when your child's on the swing later, you can also model words like go and stop. Thanks so much for listening to Not Just Theories. I really appreciate you being here. If this episode resonated with you, the best way to support the show is to follow. Leave us a rating or review. If you're playing with dolls or doing some sort of pretend play, can you think about modelling words that your child will need throughout the day? So these are words like sleep or eat or up. So we know children learn best when they're having fun, and play is naturally full of really beautiful repetition. And if you pick words that are motivating to your child, functional, useful words, requesting words, protesting words that your child can use in play and in their daily life, they're far more likely to learn them. So when you're doing all of this, we still want you to follow their lead. So if your child points to the fridge, don't ask, "What's that?" Just say, "Fridge. Let's open it. Open the fridge." If they start stacking blocks, instead of asking, "What are you building?" just join in. Up, up, up. Oh no, they crashed down. If your child is already using a handful of words, you can start modeling their words back to them and then expanding to the next step. So if your child just said car, you could echo it back and add one word. So if they say car, you could say big car or fast car or stop car. If they say a word like more, you could model back to them and add some specificity. So you could say something like more bubbles, pop, pop, pop. So I guess a story from our home, I have a 1-year-old and he is really just on that verge of moving from babbling to first words. And so he's got, 1 or 2 actual words. They're dada and that. And I think he's developing a word for dummy or pacifier. But he's got basically all of his words start with a D sound. Dat, dada, and dai. But he's starting to really notice when we model words again and again. And you can just tell he's on this cusp of the language breakthrough. So every single day, every single mealtime, when he starts with his non-verbal communication, telling us that he's finished with the meal, we always model the word all done and we add a little gesture, all done. So it's a little shake of our hands in the air. And we do this every single mealtime, and he started to copy us where he'll do like a little action and he'll say or he'll say da, or sometimes he just goes but you can tell that while he hasn't quite acquired the word, he's picked up on it because we've been doing it over and over again, and not just with mealtimes. So we started in that daily routine. That's the easiest place to do it. But we now do it, when he's finished on the swing and you can tell he's done, we do the same gesture. We say all done, and he is paying attention to us. So he's not necessarily always copying us. He's not necessarily always doing it himself. But in the situation that would be a motivating thing for him to communicate, It would be a functional thing for him to communicate. And in fact, he's already communicating it with his nonverbal communication. When I say nonverbal communication with a 1-year-old, what I'm talking about is he starts throwing his food instead of eating it, and the plate goes flying. When we notice those cues, we're trying to give him a more appropriate way, or a way that we would prefer for him to communicate that same idea. The takeaway when you're thinking about words that are functional, motivating, powerful, and social, really key things to thinking about are those requests and the protests, because I think it's really easy to focus on words that you want your child to learn. So those are words like the animals, the colors, shapes, or even social words like please and thank you, whereas they actually don't necessarily help your child communicate meaningfully as much as words that maybe you don't want them to learn might communicate, like no or stop or mine or go away. I think I often have parents say that they don't want to work on those words when they come to see me as for speech therapy, because they don't want their child to say them. And I think it's really important to draw the distinction. So, I mean, there are 2 reasons why that argument's not great. One is because if your child really wants to communicate that message anyway, they're going to find a way. If they want somebody to stop or to go away, usually it's, produced physically. So you'll see younger children who don't have the words use their bodies to communicate no and stop. They'll push you away, they'll snatch something, they'll hit another kid, they'll pinch, they'll bite. So it's not teaching your children these words doesn't prevent them from communicating these messages. It just means they're forced to communicate them physically instead of verbally. I mean, obviously there's a whole separate step, which is choosing to do it verbally even when they've got the words. That's a different topic, but they do need the words in order to be able to have a chance of communicating anyway other than physically. And the other thing is, it's actually a bit of a safeguarding thing. You want your child to be able to communicate loudly, no, stop, I don't like it. And we want them to understand that they are allowed to communicate that and encourage them to communicate it, so that if they're in a position where someone's doing something that they really don't want and they can't, it's really important for your child to be able to communicate these messages to keep themselves and their bodies as safe as possible. So do not shy away from teaching your child protest words. Remember, it's not going to have them, it's not teaching them the concepts. They're going to have these concepts anyway. All you're doing is empowering your child to actually communicate them in a way that's much more polite and socially acceptable in, say, a daycare setting than pushing or shoving. But it's also much more vocal, and someone's doing something at the park that you want you want to be able to hear your child across the playground saying no, stop, so that it cues you to look and see whether your child is safe in that moment. So anyway, that's my little rant about protest words. Please, please, please teach your child protest words as early as you can. There is no point at which it's too young to be teaching your child words like no or go away or stop. And then the other thing to think about is just, if you're going to be sitting there drilling flashcards at your child, which I don't think you should. Honestly, flashcards, we use them occasionally in therapy, but especially in the under 3s, it's really, really uncommon for flashcards to be the ideal way for your child to learn. If you're going to be doing it, try and make it more functional. But on even more than that, please try and work on it through play, through daily routines, through just natural modeling, because that's what's really going to motivate your child. It's much more natural for them to learn in that method. So if there are specific words that you really want your child to learn, for whatever reason, you think it's going to be helpful, useful, social, meaningful for your child, instead of buying a pack of flashcards, buy a book or borrow a toy. Go to the library, borrow 5 books that might have the natural opportunity to model that exact word to your child in a way that's a little bit more meaningful than a flashcard is on its own. So steer clear from drilling, build it into routines and play, but this is all still within that framework of the serve and return I spoke about in my last episode, where you are waiting for your child to show interest in sending that sort of message, and then you're returning that serve by modeling it for them, because that is how words stick. That's it for today. Thanks again for listening to Not Just Theories. Next week, I will be wrapping up this little early communication series by talking a little bit about reducing non-genuine questions and how to shift our tone into a more useful way for teaching when we're talking with our children. So I'll talk a bit about why our tone matters and how to make language less about testing and more about connecting. And that will be it for this little early communication set. I will probably in the future start addressing what to do next after this initial, first 20 to 30 words, because we do shift focus a little bit more, but that's all ahead of us. Until next week, I would really love for you to notice what words is your child already trying to say, or what messages are they trying to communicate? So which words are they really actually going to need to make their world easier? And this works across all age ranges. What words is going to make your child's life easier? What are they going to be motivated to say? And start there.